funniest thing in the world when Danny. I mean, this kind of goes in line with a little conversation we had when Danny told his parents that they had to hurry up to get to church because he didn't want to miss me saying good morning. So I'm like, I'm just gonna do it now.
There you go.
Well, so you know what? God always wants us to learn humility. So here's my start to the day. I did it again. I was hurrying to get my lessons together, and like it hit me like on Wednesday. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm teaching this Sunday. So I just went in and I ran a sermon list, and I figured out a new way to pull up the sermon list. I mean, at least new for me, and it's cool and it's concise. And I'm like, well, this is great. So I just I just look at the deal and I went, oh, okay, boom. And I thought I remembered, not blaming you at all, but I thought I remembered you saying something like, well, next week we'll get deeper into the love languages. And I'm like, oh, boom. And I'm like, so I'm rating this thing out, everything else. And I'm like, this is cool. Like, this should be a good discussion. I'm really happy with this whole scenario. And then this morning, I always like pray over my messages, and I like to go in and review them, highlight them, move a little bit of stuff around. And I go in and I go, today's the 15th. Why am I on the? Oh my gosh, I wrote the wrong one. I had to send him a message this morning going, man, I'm so sorry.
Yeah, I know. I studied them pretty heavily, and I got some other things too. Spiritual gifts. Is that something we're talking about in service this morning?
Yes.
Sweet.
Intimacy. Look, so intimacy and affection. Corey Griffith. So I'd like to introduce myself this morning. I'm Corey Griffith. If you like this morning's message, my name's Tom. If you don't like it, I'm Corey. And you can direct all text, email, WhatsApp communications to Michael Hamsing. That's memmike@gmail.com.
I'm on it. You just inherited a file too, by the way.
Somebody was supposed to send somebody was supposed to send us a check for something, and I said, I don't know whether we got it or not, or something, or I got it. I think it was like it's for my birthday or something, and I'm like, and they said, oh, we're sending all the checks to 1070 Bosque Farms, and I said, well, then there's an 80% chance we received it, right? And they said 80% chance, and I said, well, the last envelope I mailed to a guy on May 3rd in Maryland got there on June 4th. So 80% chance. And there's always open mailboxes. You're not sure who's digging in them at night, all that kind of stuff.
That's not specific to Bosque Farms. I have mail that I just got back as undeliverable at work. I got them back on Friday, and they were sent out the beginning of May. That's
Yeah, and then they wonder. Right. So here's so I guess when I tell them what we're not talking about today, because your kids are. So here's what we're not talking today: sex. Okay, we're not talking about sex. This is not about sex, and the reason it's not about sex is both simple and complex in my mind biblically. The simplicity of it is for one relationship, and it is for a marriage relationship for a man and a woman. Period. That's it. Like that's the simplicity of it. Now, from a marriage standpoint, it can get a little complex. Okay, but from a simple deal, so that's not what we're talking about today. So I guess I figured I'd start the discussion is what is the difference between Happy Father's Day to everybody. Oh, I should have just flipped that. What is the difference in your mind? Because there's a difference, okay, between intimacy, love, and affection. And listen, I even in researching it, I don't necessarily think there's one solid, oh, that's what it is kind of answer. But I'm interested to kind of set the stage here so we can all learn and grow closer to God and his way of doing things. What's the difference between these three things? Thank you, Michael. So I'm going to put that up here for everybody. Corey, can you not erase this one because I want to make sure to share this wisdom with the next class. Spelled different. Keep that up. That's like a God moment right there to me. I mean,
I think it's the distance. I guess I see love as overarching 30,000 foot view that should encompass everything you do. And affection, I guess I think of affection as a physical thing, and holding hands, or hugging, kissing, whatever. Or sometimes Jenny likes physical touch, where I'm learning to be comfortable with it. But I'd be sitting reading, and she would walk by and put her hand on my back a bit. Well, to her, that's affection. And I think the intimacy is the more.
Well, what does affection mean?
Um,
I mean, it's not the same, but what would be affection? Because that's separating the action.
Yeah, I don't know. I think that she gets a certain look on her face when when I'm giving her hand on my face, and then she gets that lovey look. And to me, that's kind of a combination of affection.
Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, thank you, Michael, because that's a great start to where we're going. Because here we are, I think all of us men in here are well, young men, but the men in here, we're all over 50 years old. And you hear Michael, thank you for your bravery and honesty. But here's Michael going, like he didn't give me his normal Michael. Well, this is this and this is this, right? I mean, here's what I heard you say that you have to kind of think about it a little bit, right? And then what I also heard you say is you deal with a conflict in your life the same way I and mostly probably Corey and you and everything else. I mean, you're dating. I mean, those translations is the problem. That's what we're talking about today. I think the whole love language thing, I'll say it now and I'll say it later, is not exclusive. Like that, there's not just five. Okay, I do believe that Gary Chapman was wonderful. Okay, and I think it's a great basis for like biblical marriage and pre-marriage discussion. But I always warn people, like, and I don't necessarily care what the rest of them are. I'm just saying I don't limit God into creating those five things. But I can tell you after, you got to figure I've been married 20 from 22 to what is that? That's a lot of years, 37 years. And I feel the same way as you. I'll tell you a little story, and hopefully Corey doesn't kick me. There's nothing in my mind bad about this, so I hope I'm okay. But I wanted to share this early on when my wife and I were struggling in our marriage. I mean, the fear of God is what kept us together. But God put some people in my life, and we would do. I mean, I was literally spending about $800 a month on counselors, and that was like 20 years ago. I mean, it was bad. And I was going to counseling, she was going to counseling, we were going to counseling. I was in a counseling session one night, and I couldn't help but think of this as I was putting this together. Guy said to me, how, the counselor said, how do you show affection to your wife? And I'll be honest with you, you know what I told him? I said, well, I think my wife's got the best bum in the world. And anytime I get a situation, I make sure, Corey. I mean, you know me enough to know the confidence that this came out of my stupid mouth with. I said, anytime I get the opportunity to. I take that opportunity. Anytime. Because it's my wife, right? So I apologize, sir. But
your mother used to hate that.
oh, well, this is where we're going with it. So here's this intelligent counselor.
Public displays of affection to an extreme introvert.
Oh, there was no public display of affection. This was private, public. It was all encompassing. And I was very confident this is how I show affection to my wife. So the counselor, smart guy, he looks at my wife next and he goes, how does that make you feel?
I'll tell you.
And I'm over there going, go ahead, honey. I mean, we're getting a win here, man. I mean, we are going for the win, man. I mean, it's like I was a runner, man. I mean, I could see the line. Nobody's in front of me. We got this, man. I don't even hear steps behind me. And she said, it makes me feel like that's all he cares about. She said this. She said, I feel, whether it's true or not, that most men I have met in my life want one thing from me, And when my husband does that, it makes me feel that way. It broke my heart. It broke my heart. And I think that's when I understood the difference between love, intimacy, and affection. I mean, I can sit here confidently and tell you I have a pretty good understanding because of experience, not because of what I read, not because of what I did. And then the counselor, being the wise man that God put into my life, then he asked another question to my wife. And he said to her, "What would make you feel affection from your husband?" And she said, "I love when he moves my hair away and kisses me on the neck." And I will tell you, for almost 100%, that happens every day. Like when my wife is sitting there having her coffee in the morning, I can't throw the hair away anymore. She made that easier for me. She was trying to help. She was a helpmate. She cut all the hair off, so I didn't have to do that. But I never miss a day that when I kissed her this morning, like I put my hand on her shoulder and I reached down and I don't get technical. Like I kiss her on the side of the head, but if she's sitting there, I'll kiss her on the neck.
How do you even find that out? They don't.
Because I asked. And that was my mistake. I mean, I oversimplification, but I never asked that question because I'm like most guys and I assumed I knew. Because I was told by culture, this is what you do, right? And to me, it was funny and it was cute. And I wanted my wife to know that she was beautiful and sexy and wonderful and all these kind of things. And here's the deal: do not lean on your own understanding. Okay, there's an application for that too. If I would have, and again, I don't mean to be spot at you. I had never asked that question. I assumed because of her reaction and actions that I knew because I know things because I'm a guy. But when I asked her what made her, it changed my marriage. I will tell you that that simple act God used to dig me out of the marriage pit I was in. 100%.
I agree. I think that that people, even me, think based on your, well, not just your history, but also your experiences. So you're expecting things all this time later, and it's just ingrained in you. And then you're like, don't even question what you're doing. You're like, and you find out the person, uh, your opposite doesn't do that, and they're thinking there's something wrong. And then you're like,
Because of expectations.
why does it even have to happen that way? Like why is the responses you're not getting the response that you think you would get?
Yeah.
And
Well,
it's a good point.
this is an interesting, and I admit I'm going to rabbit trail. I'll just bring it back real quick. But this morning in my quiet time, I was listening to a devotion, and it wasn't like a daily one; it was another one, and I had like a humbling aha moment, and it was one of my favorite verses in the Bible is Romans 8:28. I love Romans 8:28. It has given me perspective, shaped me, calmed me down, learned, helped me trust, all these kind of things. It's just I just love that verse. But I had to have some time with God this morning. Like I went, I intellectually I know exactly what this guy said, and I'll share it with you in a second. But I don't practice that in my mind. Because that verse says God works all things for the good of those he loves according to his purpose. And you know what my interpretation of that is? He works all things for my good because he loves me according to his purpose. And this commentator this morning was saying, I think what God is talking about, he works it for the good. For the good. And let me just give you like my moment. It answers the question of why we suffer. It answers the question why we don't always get what we want. It answers the question why, like, well, I don't see that as good. Why did God work that? I had such a narrow understanding of verse, and I felt like this morning God went, because he was talking about Tyndall, and I actually know a relative of Tyndall, which is kind of funny. But Tyndall, his call in life was to get the Bible translated so that more people could use it, and the man died for this. I mean, you're going. I mean, when in today's vernacular, If Michael said to me, Tom, I think I have a calling to translate the Bible into a more people on the spectrum version, I'd say, Michael, how can I help? That's a beautiful thing. I wouldn't be going, Michael, I want to throw a flame at you. I want to turn your hair on fire. Don't give them the word. Right?
Just hand them the book of Romans.
Michael, if you do get that calling, I would suggest and I think and beg my friend over here would agree, start with Romans. Start with Romans. I think you know that. You know?
Asperger's and
So let me loop this back on. So love, I like your explanation. Love is a multifaceted thing, right? I can just answer like this, like I do this in weddings. I say it is an overused word today. This is not a word that we reserve. And when I tell people in premarital training that they need to find something deeper to tell each other than I love you, they need to search and spend time together researching. And here's the way I tell the joke. I do it every single wedding, so I can do it with good timing. I say, now, when I was counseling these people, they told me they were going away on a honeymoon. And they asked this silly question. They said, what are we to do? So I, as a good pastor, decided to give them some instructions on what to do on their honeymoon. And then everybody kind of like, starts giggling. And I said, well, here's what I told them. I told them that the most beautiful thing that I have seen on this earth is two 80-year people that have been married over 60 years, holding hands and going out for a walk. To me, that is, to this day, the most beautiful thing. That is affection. It is intimacy, and it is an expression of love that is deeper than my personal understanding because I haven't been on this earth 60 years yet. So I don't understand the depth of that love for somebody. I also know as a human being that I've experienced different kind of loves. I get to counsel young guys every once in a while, and they'll say, well, she broke up with me and I really loved her. And I'm getting to be an old cantankerous guy. I just want to go, you didn't love her. You liked her a lot. Okay. You lusted after her a lot, but you didn't love her.
That was the word.
Right? You didn't love her. You were confusing lust with love. You were confusing like with love because it's multifaceted, right? So I love my dogs. Love my dogs. Like I literally like the other day I was cleaning out my RV and bears out there running all over the place and all of a sudden I had this crazy New Mexico thought. I'm like, oh my gosh, if a coyote came up the street right now and jumped over, bear couldn't defend himself. And then I had this other thought, and I don't know where it came from, but you do know, like I would go after that coyote with my bare hands to protect bear. Like I wouldn't care. There would be no thought of getting bit, rabies, any of that. Like I would take that coyote out to the best of my ability. It wasn't going to happen. Why? Because I love my dog. But let's hope I love my wife a lot more than I love my dog. It's why, like most of us in this room, I've been around when you guys lost dogs. I mean, most of us forget about the machoism. We're crying like little kids because we love. But I think those types of loves start to shape our perspective of love. And we forget the one thing that we need to shape our perspective of love on what God said. And that's the difference. So to me, like love is this multifaceted thing. Affection is putting love in action by knowing the other person's definition of affection.
I think to me, I was trying to, as you were talking, it was like the love languages fit into that because I guess I have always thought of affection as either holding hands or some sort of physical contact, but it's not really. That's really, I think, where the love languages fit in. Like Jenny holding hands to her, big deal.
Yeah.
That's that, but that's also very intimate. But on a daily basis, how do I show affection? I take out the trash without being told. That's just my thing to do. And
as I was playing around with this, putting this together this week, I was kind of laughing and I thought, not critical. There wouldn't be a critical moment about it. But if I could have a conversation with Gary Chapman this afternoon, I would ask him why he chose to call them the 5 love languages and not the 5 affectionate languages. Because see, I think what he's talking about in love languages, I think he's talking about affection. and I could be wrong. I'm okay being wrong, but those are what he's talking about. Those 5 things is what are the expressions of my love for you that touches your heart. And I think that I want to move on, but I think that's the flow here. I love my wife. And because I love my wife, I want my wife second to God to have my intimacy, my sole attention, my command, my if I had to pick red or blue, blue is always right. Like she is always going to be second to me. The only thing that would ever stop me from taking care of my wife is me having a strong call from the Holy Spirit that I need to do something different. It's the only thing. But I had to grow into that, right? But affection's the practice of it, and it's why to answer your question, where I personally believe the love languages fit in is our love languages is shown through various forms of affection, and when we follow God's rule by putting God first and others next, that we love others, then we practice it with affection, and the depth of our infection, or the depth of our affection, is intimacy.
Not sepsis.
Now,
Not sepsis.
Yeah, you said
The
it.
depth of the
That was the first thing
infection.
I thought. Oh crap, IV fluid.
Sorry.
hey, what's a class with me without a misspoken, misspelled, miss something?
Those are the sick children. But to me, intimacy is such a personal level where
Yes.
the guards come down, mask comes off, and if it's not open both ways, it's not intimate. It's heartbreaking.
Where you're vulnerable.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I love that. And I didn't even think about that. But I would say just off the top of my head, this is not a one-way street. Like I would say, I would sit here and tell you, like just being vulnerable, that there's no way this is a one-way street. If this isn't a two-way street, you cannot have intimacy. If God didn't love me, then I can't be intimate with him. I have to pour into his deal. Like, and I don't think there's ever an end in this me. I don't think there's a goal in intimacy. We want to keep getting closer to God. Like I hope and pray that my last breath on this earth is the deepest I've ever been in intimacy with God. You see, this is the problem in disciple makers. I mean, I understand we're in a marriage disciple class, like that's our focus, but our problem is we don't understand as a young Christian what God's love is. We keep defining it in our terms. Well, Corey really liked me this week, so I feel very loved. Like, oh, I love my brother Corey. And then Corey like doesn't like me one week, right? And then I'm like, well, we kind of fell out of love. It's not a thing. It's not a feeling. But affection is the practical application of it. So our goal, in relationships, like even non-marital, is we want to, I keep thinking about Alicia. What was the young girl's name from Texas? I can't remember. Carol's. Anyway,
Alicia.
like I would have loved her to have been here another month, because I think I probably could have invited you or something to come in here and sit in here. I think we could have had hours worth of conversation, because that little question that she asked me, what should I look for in somebody to date, has so much depth to it. And I thought about that. I'm like, it's somebody that you don't fear intimacy with.
Can I throw out what intimacy is not, and actually what love and affection is not? It's not infatuation. Intimacy is deeply personal both ways. Infatuation is maybe an attempt at intimacy, but it's one directional.
Well, I mean, that's kind of a neat direction, Michael. Like what it's not is what's the word you just used?
Infatuation.
Don't go there.
ATU. ATION.
That's good.
I know where you're going with it. I'm like, nope, don't ask me. Let me say
Yeah,
it.
I'm like, no, wait, I had it and I just lost it. But these are some things it's not. This is what we're not talking about today. And let's put the this is not the conversation we're having today, because these things are the problem. These things are the solution to what we all deeply desire. I mean, I understand, like I haven't said it, but this is a deep desire in every single one of us to be loved with an affection that grows our intimacy. It's a deep desire that God has in it. First for him, would you agree? And then God gave us, a lot of us, I mean, we talked about that, like, is it better to be single or married? But when he gave us married, that's the pathway to be loved, to show affection, to grow, increase intimacy.
I'm going to steal a catchphrase from another church, but God wants to be known and to be made known, but we have that too. We want to be known, and we're not at all satisfied until we reach that intimacy where it's a two-way street. And there are, for me, I have a real hard time with a depth of intimacy because I have that. I have a fear of failure, but I have a fear of being known. If she really knew me, would she still stick around? Well, we've been together 25 years. I ain't worried about that anymore. But well, I'm not worried about her knowing me, but we did have a conversation not long ago. I said, well, I have a fear that if I made the decision to pull the plug on Jody, that I wouldn't have you anymore. And she was completely offended by that, which for good reason. It was my own fear. But that's part of intimacy. I didn't want to make that fear known to her. And when I did, it was okay. And it stopped being a fear for me.
Mm. Well,
But with anybody else, if that wasn't Jenny, they're not getting that.
I'll be vulnerable and tell you, like I had one of those moments about 2.5 years ago, because the guy that I just talked about, who counseled me and explained, we got to be really good friends with him and his wife. And a year and a half ago, they celebrated their 34th year of marriage. You know how they celebrated it? Living in two separate houses on the verge of divorce. And today, it was his birthday yesterday. I reached out to his birthday. I said, hey, man, sorry, I haven't checked in. How's things going? Well, we processed the divorce and we're healing. Do you understand how that shocked me? As a guy who thought I knew everything, had a horrible marriage, got back on track, doing things, like my wife is joined to me. Like, I don't know. It's the arm thing. Like, I don't understand. I want to call him. I'm not going to. I'm just not going to because I don't have the call to call him. But I just want to ask her, like, how could you give up your arm? Like, I teach that all the time. I need to understand it because you see, like, I'll tell you, my call, Michael, was like, and again, I'm not picking on what you said, but I'm not worried. After 25 years, I'm not worried about that anymore. You see what he did? He put the scare in me. I better worry about it at year 34 because Satan, that's the best. If Satan can bust up a 2-year marriage, then we go, oh well, they weren't meant to be together. You know what? It was just a bad call. After 34 years, Satan is having a field day that I hate. Like I don't even get that. Like I never saw these people that's not connected. Like they were like, like I never understood it.
It's a living thing, and I think too many people, especially young men, and well, women too, but they think, well, once I get past Christians, let's say, in the Christian realm, once I get past this boundary of working for this relationship and getting married, that means I don't have to worry about anything. I could just be whatever I want. I mean, you're probably gonna take a long time to get back away from that, but the longer things go, the more careless you become, more slowly. Complacency. Yeah.
Complacency. There's the word.
You starve the marriage. I'm thinking. I've never been married, but that's just what I hear. It's like a plant. You got to keep it alive till you die.
I sometimes good and sometimes bad. Just feel like I'm a very open kind of guy. Like you can kind of like ask me anything, I'll tell you. I don't really care. I'll give you that. Like I'm done past that deal. That probably has some bad sides to it too. But I was maybe a week ago. I was kind of having a rough day emotionally. Maybe not depression, but I just kind of wasn't in a. I didn't feel I had any worth, value. Like felt like everything I did that day, I just got kicked in the teeth. And I came home, and this is how Satan gets involved in long-term marriages. Is I knew this later, but my wife had a rough day the other way. People were very aggressive to her, and when somebody's aggressive to my wife, she she's still at that fight fire with fire thing, right? So I came home and I said something probably more like in a 12-year-old statement, sort of like, and I think it started like this: "Oh, you bought this. You must really love me." And she like attacked. So here I am, broken and vulnerable. She's got an aggressive thing. All I was trying to do is kind of be like a cute little, like, lovey-dovey 12-year-old, and I get attacked. And then here's where I failed. I responded. And I said, you know, I have been broken down all day. The only thing I have felt all day is people wanting, wanting, and wanting. And I've had to not be able to respond to those because people would reach out innocently and say, hey, do you know this verse? Or can you help me with this? But I had one of those days where even that was starting to just put me over the edge. And I said something, I'm going to say not necessarily unloving, but it probably was. And I said, why can't you be here for me? Why can't you give me a little bit of compassion? And her response was, don't you dare try to manipulate me. And I got up and started crying and just went in my den and turned on my computer and did the waffle thing that we talked about last week. I just closed all the other waffles off, and I just went into my little zone. And when I think back about that now, how crazy is that? It was just words. It was just feeling. I mean, I know now intellectually how to do that. But if it wasn't because of the intimacy, that could have broke up a relationship. I mean, I've dealt with less than that breaking up relationships. Well, I needed and he isn't there. But because of our love, our affection, and our intimacy, it just moved past. You know, one of the biggest problems, and it's the depth behind, and you've touched on it a couple times, Arlen. I tell people, if you want the secret to a healthy marriage and a healthy relationship, you need to increase your communication and decrease your expectations, because that's what blocks in the way. So, I mean, I think this class is going great. It's just not anywhere near my plans. That's why I keep jumping around. I keep jumping around. I'm like, well, we already covered that. We already covered that. Okay, well, we're going there. So let's, like, for the rest of this time, let's move into what the love languages are, or what I say. So I thought we'd spend some time on 1 Corinthians 13, but hopefully we know it. So these are what Gary Chapman says are the 5 love languages: words of affirmation, quality time, receiving gifts, physical touch, and acts of service. So let me start with the negative. Why do you think those can be a problem? I mean, if you look at those look pretty nice, don't you? I mean, can we all agree those are pretty cool things, right? I mean, you like those, and you're like kind of like, right? But do you feel when you look at those, and I ask you that question, there's ones you gravitate to?
Yeah. I gotta say, my first reaction was receiving gifts is awfully immature. But
Ah,
are there times when I bought something for Jenny that I didn't think was necessary, but she really wanted it, and I just wanted to do something for her? Yeah, very recently.
but I mean, so like you look at those. I mean, those are negative things, right? You know, it's like, if these were talked down to them, you know, physically abuse them, we'd all be going, oh, because they're the opposite. But I mean, whether these ring to you, I'm not asking that. I'm not asking you like how do they ring to you. I'm saying you can look at those and go, no, those are 5 nice things, right?
It's the results.
The results. What's another problem? And maybe that's where you're going with that. What's the problem of these nice things? Because nice things can sometimes have bad results, which usually causes conflict, right?
Formula.
It's not a formula. And what's even deeper than that?
You have to talk about the delivery.
The
And
delivery.
the delivery and those are awfully vague. What does that mean? Physical touch. I slap my wife on the rear end. That's physical touch. That's not what she was going for. She was going for the hand holding and the
Thank you for using my example, Michael. That was perfect. That was right on track, man. But I'm gonna argue like even deeper than that. I still don't think you hit on the main problem. Just dig a little bit. What's the problem? I said it about 5 minutes in. I help you. Leaning on our own understanding. And there's two problems with that. One is, well, I like words of affection or affirmation. I like words of affirmation. Therefore, she should love words of affirmation. Right?
Assumptions.
I felt, I don't know if you felt the same thing. A lot of times I think we're mind melded with certain things. But I felt like the other week you and I had like one of our best meetings, and I felt like we made this incredible breakthrough that lines right up with this, that we finally realized, my dumbness, not his, is we're different. The problem is we both knew we were different, right? I mean, duh, right? But I don't think in my head I ever spent enough time going, how are we different? And how can that be used together for the church, for God's glory?
When you have a role,
Roles.
you think automatically these are the tenets of that role, and everybody needs to fit in that. So that's why you aren't different, but yet you are, because you're going to approach those things differently and with different understanding, different passions. So they're going to clash.
Look, I think these things are so good that I think we all in a relationship have a degree of these. Michael, you were talking about Jenny coming over and physical touch and this, but having her never touch you again is probably not a desire on your list. Please tell me that. Okay.
That is dramatically changed. Because I know that it means something to her now, I do actually appreciate that. It was when I was stuck in myself, and I'm like, God, stop touching me.
When you're stuck in yourself, there's the point. There's problem number one. We start taking our own understanding and applying that to the other person. So my wife is a very complex person. So am I, by the way, right? And you. But I've had to look at this and go, like, the physical touch thing is like, it's okay with Sherry. Like, she don't mind holding hands on the beach, but that's not her thing. Like, typically, if there's a hand holding, it's usually me reaching out. Every once in a while, she will reach out and hold my hand, and I swear to God, it's like electricity going off in my body. I'm like, oh my God! Like she grabbed my hand. Like she walked over the other night and hugged and kissed me, and I'm being funny, but I had to go like this to make sure it was my wife. She doesn't do that. That's not her thing. But I was like, I mean, my heart, it was just like got fluid, just filled into it, and it like was ready to burst.
It means more because you know it's not. Yeah. She did it solely for you.
So
yeah, because if it happens like too much, then you're just like, when it doesn't happen, you're like, there's something.
Or when you try to force it, like I feel when it's fake. I feel when it's fake. And here's the funny part. They do too. Your spouse knows when you're being fake. Like I know this about my wife now. Words of affirmation, she doesn't mind them. I give them to her every day. That's my love language. And she sees it as sometimes, I shouldn't say, let me clarify. She sees it as sometimes that I'm reaching, like she calls it fishing. Like I'm fishing. Like I go, oh my God, honey, you're so beautiful. I love you. And she sees through it. She sees that I'm weak, and I'm asking her to go, I love you too, and you're handsome. Like I'm fishing because I need. Like if you ever read that book, Love and Respect, he talks about there. Like we all have this tank. We all have this capacity, and when you step on that fuel line, they're eventually just like gasping for air, right? If I have enough air, I'm not panicked. But you step in that line, I start gasping. All of a sudden, I'm clawing and reaching, right? Because we have this instinct to survive. But it works that way with love. So like my wife is acts of service. Like, my wife is, believe it or not, just like that's why I was laughing when Michael said it. My wife is receiving gifts, then it's acts of service and quality time. Physical touch and words of affirmation are way down on the list. So watch what I got right yesterday. Yesterday she got up late. Her copy was there. Her copy has to be there in the morning. I've had people go, I can't believe you do that. And I go, but I love her. So it's always there. This morning, we have friends at the house. I drank my coffee and then I poured the rest of it in here so that I would have a fresh pot because there's no way in God's little green earth I want them to come into that house before her and her not to have coffee. See, my wife will know that. I don't have to go get credit for it. She'll know what I did. Okay? So it's acts of service. So yesterday, she has her coffee, and then she comes in and she says, "How are we with chicken feed?" And I said, "Well, I need to go get some." She's like, "Well, when you go get it, pick up some dog treats." I said, "Okay, you know what? I need to finish this one thing. If it's okay with you, like let me finish this thing, and I'll go do it, right?" So then here's the deal. Without being told, I have to be reminded. That's exactly what I did. I made sure that that thing that I needed to do, which was working on this, right, was was done in like 10, 15 minutes because I know my wife's patience is about that long. And I'm not being funny. That's about what it is. So I said, "Hey, honey, I'm running out to get that." Now I got points. It's not about points, but you get what I'm saying. I got points for going. Then when I got there, I got the stuff that she wanted. But my wife loves calla lilies. Guess what there was two of on the table right in front of the deal? Was a calla lily. You know, when I came home, and it's exactly what I said. I said, you know, some guys buy their wives flowers, which are temporary. But I love you so much. I bought you a plant which will grow. And she's like, but her face said, I got to win. Her face said, I got to win. Because you know what I did? I went and I did an act of service and I brought her a gift. Like she felt loved. If you want to make your marriage great, just one facet. I mean, there's hundreds of ways, but one of those things is figuring this out. You know, I talked about going through the spiritual gifts the other week, or the fruit of the spirit, and having that conversation with your spouse. But this goes on his list too. I don't necessarily think they change. I never really researched that. I haven't read his book in like 20 years, but I think this is like a core thing, the way we're wired. And the thing he says in um, Love and Respect, it was in my head and just went out. He says, he talks about blue and pink, like not less than, but different. And it's this melding of this difference together that makes everything. I wouldn't want my wife anymore to have the same love language as me. I definitely desire my wife to make sure my love tank is full and not step on my line, and she's got the same. But I do think like that occasion when she comes over and holds my hand or just comes and hugs me and kisses or reaches over and I think she knows. She knows that that's what feeds me. And again, this, when you're immature, you think it's sex. This isn't sex. This is just laying your hand on your spouse's knee or touching her hand. Like my wife loves when I walk by and I just touch her feet. Like I can see like that means something to her. But me like rubbing her back, she's like, okay. Like a minute was good. 2 minutes, way too much, right? Next.
She's overwhelmed.
Because she matters.
Yeah, I don't like.
But it's a good, it's a good point because you do have to know, and if you think you know based on what you've, I don't know, just take for granted all your life, even short or long, you have expectations. And when those expectations aren't, that's what I'm learning now. So that when those expectations aren't filled the way you somebody said, either a buddy or you've seen somebody else or a magazine or something, they say these are, this is how you get what you want or whatever, right? Because everybody has.
Well, and I can't, I got to tell you about it. It's like my ADHD brain is smiling because like I had a plan, which ADHD people, we're not good with plans, right? Because we like go, you guys are doing a beautiful job. Because let me lead into the last section. We're going to close today with what you just said, because there's expectations come from somewhere. And in counseling, we need to deal with where those expectations come from. Like I know a lot of you pretty intimately. So I don't want to touch anybody's deals, but so I'm going to share ones that I know that I share with other people in this room. I grew up with a very abusive mother. Physically, she'd probably be in jail today for, or what do you call it, CYFD type of deal. But I can tell you, and I'll start by telling you this, it makes me cry almost every time I think of it. But I kind of joke about it because it at least gives me some peace, laughter. Is sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. And I'm standing here as a 59-year-old man telling you the abuse that I got verbally in my life is with me now. I don't remember the spankings. I don't remember the pain of the spankings, but I know what it feels like to be called a no good son of a female dog. I know what that pain feels like. And I manifest that into relationships. I do it in business relationships. I do it in friendships, and I do it, and it is my worst fault. I pray to God I can get out of myself someday and be him because he took all that. But I take it as sometimes a reaction. When you're talking about expectations, you know what? Guess what? Guess where? But here's God works all things, the good and the bad, right? My craving for words of affection is because I never got them when I was a kid. I was never called. I remember being I was like this overachiever. You know why? Guess why I was an overachiever? It's really not a complicated situation. I was a complicated overachiever because I wanted to do everything I can. Well, maybe if I go harder, maybe if I get this grade, maybe if I get this grade. And God worked it great, man. I mean, I never had a B. I never had anything but A's in high school the whole time. Not because I'm all that smart. It's because I would just work and work and work and work. And I do remember like in 11th grade, I got a B plus on an English exam. And I went to the teacher and I said, I've never had a B plus. I'm sure it's right. Is there anything I could do to gain another 2 points in this test? Because if I go home with a B plus, I'm going to get hit. I'm going to get punished. And I think the teacher believed me. And she said, I'll tell you what, if you do, she goes, what a cool teacher. She said, you only got 2 wrong or something, or 3 wrong in the test. How about if I re-ask him, if you get the right answer, I'll give you the points. Can't believe she did. Well, she did. But we crave that. That's where it comes from. In relationships, we like to, I think sometimes like dating relationships kind of work like they kind of work kind of yucky. I mean, when you really think of it, you're dating and people are like, oh yeah, my last boyfriend was a jerk. Oh, my last girlfriend did this. And I just want to sit there and go, stop. We need to get a biblical definition of what this is. And it has nothing to do that God uses those things to shape you. But when we bring, and some of it we can't help, I get that. But when we bring those things into a relationship, like, I don't know this. I've never had this, and I'm not calling you out in any way, but like some cool conversations I'd motivate you to have with Carla is, how have you been hurt in the past? How has that affected you? You know, like what needs do you feel need met? Like those are helpmate questions. It took me a long time to learn that my wife was abused horribly by her dad. So every time I raise my voice and that bigger voice comes out, my wife cringes. I can see her cringe. Why do you, not even saying this funny, half the time I'm a goofball is to soften that. Because if I'm too matter of fact with my wife, she can't deal with that. But my wife's smart, so she can get my sense of humor. She can get my goofing around, and she'll get the point, right? Sorry, I didn't mean to take over the room. What were you gonna say, Arlen? I'm sorry.
What's interesting about this relationship? I've had several, and to the point of getting married, so it was never, wasting time. Because I've always been in the church, so there's always been a point. But this one, we don't really talk about our past unless there's an issue. And we do. So this is like really weird because I think I told you about it before, but it's just like, wait, is this actually working? Because we don't complain, but it's like we decided, we're done with all that other stuff that we've always done with other relationships. That didn't do any good. It's like this was new and nothing outside of that But there are some on my part and on her part as far as struggles, and even more so because we've been both not married for so long, and we've had multiple uh, dating boyfriends or girlfriends, right? So there's a compounded different way. There's a compounded interest as far as all the problems. So the way we deal with it is a lot different than I have ever dealt with it, and I like, and it's nice. But then it's also like, wait, is this even real? It's like this is what I wanted, and it's like this is real because
It's hard.
You don't trust it.
It's just, this really does all fit together. The waffles and the spaghetti, right? And the love languages and the love and respect. It all fits together. You know why? It's all based in God's word. And it kind of moves out from there. Like perception. Like I have that on my email thing. It says perception's a choice because I truly believe that we can always choose how we choose to perceive something because everybody perceives things differently, right? But like my buddy, it's kind of a funny story. Is a friend of mine. We were out together for dinner, and we were goofing around, and he said, "Well," he goes, "I made the mistake of telling my wife she was a 6 on a scale of 1 to 10." We were having this conversation, but here's the funny part: his mistake was not what we're probably all thinking because I'm telling my wife she's a 10, period. There ain't no other answer, man. Like 9.5 is a bam, you know what I'm saying? But, but he was coming from the perspective of, I don't want to take you for granted. Like, it was crazy when we started talking, and like they had their fight about it and they had their resolution about it. Now they were sharing about it. And she said, I had to see where he was coming from. Like I married him because he was unique and different and like no other man I ever met. But I forgot that sometimes I had to accept that he processes something different and like no other man she ever met. And this guy, he's just very pragmatic. So in his mind, he was like, you're a 6. And in my life, every other woman has been a 5 or less. Like you are the woman for me. But in my mind, if I think you're a 10, then I'll forget to help you. Like I'll forget to do things for you. I'll forget that it's my job to make you better towards God. When I tell you that, now all of a sudden it comes a cool thing. I still wouldn't suggest saying it, just so you know. But you see the difference? But her reaction was negative because of her expectations. She was assuming that he was saying, you're 4 points off of perfect. And she wanted to hear he was perfect. And then when she heard the explanation, one of the smartest things we can do, I think, in any marriage, any relationship, is said, hey, Mike, I'm not sure whether I heard you right. And I want to understand where you're coming from. Could you explain that a little bit more, what you said? Like, because I don't want to react. Like you said something, like what do you mean by it? And all of a sudden, you ever do that? And all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from. I interpreted it this way, but it was really, I get it now. Okay, cool.
Usually tell people, yeah, we've been together 25 years. The last 8 years have been great. What happened before that? Well, I did the opposite of that. I heard what she said and I put my baggage on it and took
Yes.
offense to it and it caused a problem.
Absolutely.
And like, that's not what I said. I'm like, okay, but that's how you
So
said
that's
it.
where I was going with the
Is
expectations
that
thing.
how she said it or is that how I heard
Like again, this is from me. This isn't from any source, but I sat there and I said, well, why is it so tough to understand? And just a couple of things that came out. It's because dating today, like dating today, I hate to tell you this, isn't necessarily or even close to about finding a spouse. I don't think that's, if you went out and got 100 young people and asked them why they're dating, I don't think that's coming up. Like more than like maybe the young girl we met from Texas, right? But we're so in tuned to our feelings, right? It didn't hurt she hurt my feelings. She hurt my feelings. And I was kind of like in my head, I go, that's your problem. Like she said what she said. How you received it is your problem. How you interpreted it is your problem. But I also said that there's an experiential problem that can happen because like we learn some of these things from how our parents interacted and how our grandparents interacted. I think like for my wife and I don't think we give this enough credit. Maybe that's what I say. I don't think we give enough credit, but we both grew up with very strong grandparents. Like there were times I couldn't understand how my grandparents were married. But you see, the bonding, they were Christians. And the bonding with that overcame anything else. It didn't matter. Like it didn't matter. That was the deal. And my parents, I watched my parents fight to the point where my mom would draw blood on my dad. It was awful. It was horrible. But there was never talk of divorce. I never ever heard my parents talk about divorce. And so I could tell you, sit here for an hour and tell you horrible stories what my mom did to my dad. Never heard divorce because it was a bad thing. Like you didn't want to do that. The fear of being divorced was worse than dealing with this. So culture today has a deal. And then here's the other thing, and you kind of brought it up, was past relationships. We bring that, who said it? Baggage, right? We bring that baggage. And you know what that baggage really is? It's a set of expectations because of an experience you had with somebody else. That's not right, just so you know. That's not fair. And when my wife says something to me like I'm not dealing with that. She's not saying I don't care. That's not how I hear it. That's how I heard it. What I hear now is you need to change your mind. Like you're putting your mom's stuff on me. I'm me. And I know it may sound cruel to you guys. It's a Sherry and I thing. Like when she does it, I will look at her and I say, Sherry, I am not Floyd. I was her dad. It just when she does it, Sherry, I'm not Floyd. Like I'm not leaving you. What's that?
You trigger things. It takes one little thing to trigger.
Something triggers. And it may not even be me. I'm not trying to duck that because I do it. But it could just be somebody mistreated her in a class. Somebody said something to her and she's in that mindset. But that's that break. Tony Robbins talks a lot about that, like almost saying something like totally off the wall because somebody's mind is running down a pathway and all of a sudden you just go, stop. And you're like, what? That's it for me. That's my trigger. I'm not Floyd. And I don't say it mean. You understand? I'm not saying it correctly. I just say, Sherry, like as loving as I know how to say it, I'm not Floyd. Like, and depending on the mood, I'll say, look, I got my own problems. I got my own mistakes. I got my own things that I need your help overcoming so that I can become more like the fruits of the Spirit.
Will it ever go away or something that you have to live with for the rest of your life?
It's up to God. But here's the deal. Like I stopped caring. Right? Let me quantify that. I stopped caring about it becoming totally solved. I started caring about it getting better and better.
So it's almost better not enter into problems. You can't avoid them when you're younger.
I will say along the same lines, my wife and I, when we were growing up together, if you want, I was 19, she was 21 when we got married. For years, when she was mad at me, she would call me her stepdad's name.
Hmm.
And it took 12 years before she realized that every time she did that, I blew my top. But I got to the point where I wouldn't respond. I wouldn't give back that same energy, the same anger. And like him, my deal was to reduce that. I never wanted to be called Charles, but one day we were going to church actually, and there was stress. Satan was at work, you could tell. Got up and I pulled up to stop and I said, I don't understand what I can do to make you happy. And I said some other things that were not so pleasant either. And she just broke down and started crying. And she said to me, you never remind me of all my failures. You don't do to me what I do to you. And from that point on, there were occasional things, but it did this drop off. And from there, all of the negatives on that got better. But it took 12 years. And I will tell you right up front, it took me growing up, but my growing up resulted in how I treated her. The way I treated her caused her to make a change to decide to treat me different. And so it takes time, and it's not a give and a take. It's a give. You have to give, and then they have to give. Sorry, I didn't mean to take away from that.
Oh my goodness, wonderful. I I just am very inclined. I want to tell you something, and I kind of joke about it, but I joke about it because it's so serious. I had some time with God probably 10, 15, 20 years ago now. And I don't, maybe somebody can help me say this better sometimes, but I asked God for permission to do something with his word. And I felt an unbelievable peace about it. I've used it 1,000 times since then. And I never feel like I'm doing the wrong thing. But I asked God if I could substitute a word when I needed to for counseling for my own self. But Ephesians tells us that our battle is not against flesh and blood, but the spiritual forces of darkness that rule this world. And here's what I ask God. When I'm having one of those moments, God, never add or delete, but God, could I translate flesh and blood into a person's name? And I want to give you this, and I hope it blesses you, but I still do this sometimes multiple times a day. My battle is not against this customer. My battle is not against this employee. My battle is not against my wife. My battle is not against somebody in the church somewhere else. It is against the spiritual sources of darkness. And that's how I want it to end again. And now Corey's going to do a great job of going into communication and conflict resolution next week. So maybe that'll be a good lead. And I have no idea. But
I got lots of practice with that.
get in bad, right?
Yeah.
So let me finish. Welcome.
I was here the whole.
God bless you. Good morning. You know, I gotta tell you, I had a bad injury a couple years ago. My 1 o'clock, I do have a little bit of vision problem on my one there. You know, I always have to have somebody on my 6 to warn me against my one. But welcome, good morning. Let me pray. Dear Father, and I know you know, like I'm laughing inside that again I wrote this wonderfully flowed wrong week training, but I was so happy with the flow. Father, I just want to thank you this morning because your flow, your conversations that you generated here are just so many multiple times better than what I have planned. And Father, I want to lift that up this morning. That we're a church that says that we operate from the balls of our feet, never afraid to move, but waiting and ready for your call to try our best to listen. And Father, I just wanted to praise you for that this morning. I feel like you led this meeting this morning, and I thank you for this wisdom. Father, can you help us put it into practice? Can you help us see that love is something that needs to be unconditional, but our sinful nature makes it conditional? But some of these answers to this is learning these affection languages, learning relationships and how people are geared. Father, help us do this. Help us grow closer to you so that we can help others grow closer to you. It's in your name I pray. Amen.